If you know me, you know I'm always on the lookout for stories with new, terrifying monster encounters. Skinwalkers and Wendigos are nice and all that, but I crave something new. That's why today I'm excited to share with you a story I got from a user named Dinsif called The Tree God of Alaska. And if there's any truth to this story, then I should warn anyone living in or visiting Alaska that there might be something extremely dark and ancient lurking in the woods and around cabins looking for its next target. Believe what you will or won't, but this story might be a good reason to stay away from Alaska. Lee died last spring. Pancreatic cancer, which is about as unfair as it sounds. But he went at home with his wife and kids around him, and I don't think he was scared. I drove up for the funeral, even though my back doesn't do well with long trips anymore, and afterward his daughter Jenna pulled me aside and asked about the scar on her father's left hand. "He never told me how he got it," she said. "Every time I asked, he would say it was from a camping trip, but it always looked like someone bit him." I told her it was a long time ago, and I didn't remember the details. But she knew I was lying. Jenna was as sharp as her dad, but she let it go anyway. I'm an old man now. Lee was the best friend I ever had, and he's gone. And I think that means I can finally talk about what happened on the Dalton Highway in October of 1989. It's been decades. That's long enough. So, I met Lee sophomore year in the weight room at Central High. Neither of us belonged there. The weight room was for football players and wrestlers, guys who moved through the hallways like they owned the place. And Lee and I were the kind of kids who ate lunch in the library and hoped nobody would talk to us. But we'd both gotten it into our heads that lifting weights might make us less invisible and make us want to be less invisible. So there we were, trying to figure out the bench press while a bunch of juniors snickered at us from the squat rack. Lee dropped a 25-pound plate on his foot the first day. Didn't even flinch. Just picked it up and racked it like nothing happened. And when I asked if he was okay, he said, "I've had worse." We started lifting together after that, spotting each other mostly, though neither of us ever put up enough weight to really need it. Lee was funny in a way that snuck up on you. He had a deadpan, dark kind of humor. Could always find something absurd in anything. I learned about his home life in pieces over the next 2 years. His dad was a drinker who thought belts were for more than holding up pants, and his mom was a substitute who was somehow always busy, so she wasn't home to see the bruises. Or maybe she saw them and didn't know what to do. Lee never talked about it directly. He would say things like, "I'm staying at my grandma's for the weekend," when his dad was on a bender. Or he'd show up at school moving real stiff and say he had slept wrong. Junior year, his parents finally divorced. His mom moved them to a 2-bedroom apartment on the east side of town, and Lee seemed lighter for a while. But something had already settled into him by then, a sort of weight he had to deal with. He apologized all the time for things that were never his fault, or weren't even things at all. Sorry for being in the way, or sorry for talking too much, sorry for existing, basically. I didn't know how to help him with any of that. I was 19 and stupid, and my own parents were fine. Distant, at worst, but fine. I'd never been hit in my life, so I just tried to be there for him, which probably wasn't enough. Lee's big thing senior year was the van he got. He bought it off a guy named DJ, a 78 Dodge Tradesman with rust along the wheel wells and an engine that sounded like it was coughing up a lung. The cool part? Well, DJ had started converting the back into a camper before his wife got pregnant, and he had to sell it. Lee finished the job over the winter. In the back was a plywood platform for a mattress, curtains his mom sewed from old bed sheets, a 2-burner camp stove that he mounted to a piece of plywood that was definitely not up to code. "We're going to Alaska," he told me in February of senior year, showing me the completed interior like it was the Sistine Chapel. "After graduation, The Dalton Highway, you and me. I asked him why Alaska, and he got this look on his face. He was serious. He kind of looked hungry too, but because it's the emptiest place I can think of, he said. I want to go somewhere so big and quiet that everything sort of just falls away. At the time, I wasn't really sure what he meant. I thought he was being dramatic, the way people are at that age. But I said sure, because Lee was my best friend, and because I didn't have any better plans. We left right after I'd failed to register for community college, and Lee had failed to find a job that didn't make him want to walk into traffic. The van made it through Montana, through the endless plains of Alberta, through the Yukon with its mountains that looked like God had crumpled up paper and forgotten to smooth it out. We broke down once near Whitehorse, the alternator, which cost us 3 days and most of our repair fund. But otherwise, the trip was the adventure we'd wanted it to be. Lee narrated the whole thing like he was hosting a nature documentary. He'd look out the window at a moose standing in a field and say, in something akin to a David Attenborough voice, "Here we see the North American moose in its natural habitat, contemplating the futility of existence." He made me laugh so hard once that I had to pull over because I couldn't see the road. We crossed into Alaska in late September. The light was already changing with those shorter days and longer twilights. We saw shades of purple I didn't know were possible. A week into Alaska, we stopped at a roadhouse about 50 miles south of the Yukon River crossing. The place looked like it might collapse any second, and the handful of locals inside looked at us like we were from Mars. Maybe we were, really. We got talking with one of them, a guy named Harold or maybe Howard, I can't remember. He was maybe 60, with a beard that had given up on being a particular color, and hands that looked like they'd done hard work most of his life. He asked what brought us up this way, and Lee told him we were driving the Dalton Highway to Deadhorse. "Bold choice for October," the guy said. "You boys know what you're getting into?" Lee said we did, though I don't think we did. The guy bought us around. First beer I'd ever had that wasn't stolen from my dad's garage fridge, and no one ID'd us, so that was great. They and we could have gotten in a lot of trouble. He then started to tell us about the area, the pipeline and the work camps, and the cold, especially the cold. Then Lee asked about local legends, which was something he always did wherever we stopped. He had a thing for that stuff like ghost stories and folklore. He liked the idea that the world was more magical or strange than it looked. The guy got quiet, though, for a second, and I thought maybe Lee had offended him. But then he said, "There's the Mickelson place. That's not really a legend, though. That's just something that happened. I should note here that I'm changing the name of the place to avoid unwanted attention there. Anyway, apparently the Mickelsons were homesteaders, the guy told us. A family of 4, husband, wife, and 2 kids, who'd staked a claim about 40 miles north of where we were currently sitting back in the late 50s. They were found dead in the winter of 1962. Officially, it was ruled an animal attack, probably a polar bear, though that didn't make much sense given how far they were from polar bear territory. But that's what locals believed, because of the bodies. "The bodies were wrong," the guy said, and he wasn't looking at us anymore. He was staring at his drink. "You see, the father was in the root cellar with the door barred from the outside. The mother and kids were in the main room, but they weren't lying down like they'd been attacked. They were sitting down, arranged around where the table should have been. Except there was no table, just them sitting in a row, looking at nothing." Lee asked about the wounds. "They looked like big bites with very sharp teeth that took its time, but they were real clean. This is why people think it's a polar bear that did it." Then Lee asked something that made me give him wide eyes, if the house was still there. The guy said it was, probably, if you know where to look, about 40 miles north, off a certain back road that didn't show up on the maps. Sure, I thought. "Nobody goes out there, though," the guy said. Why not? Lee asked. That's when the guy stood up to leave, but he told us, Place feels wrong. Even the animals stay away from there. I was hoping Lee would forget about the story. I mean, people in bars aren't exactly the most trustworthy. But 2 days later, we made camp in a pullout about 30 miles north of the roadhouse, and Lee woke me up before dawn saying he wanted to go for a walk. It was insanely cold. Cold enough that my breath looked like dragon's flames, and my fingers were numb within minutes. The sun wasn't completely up yet. We followed what looked like an old trail leading away from the road. I wasn't sure why just yet. Lee hadn't explained much if there was something to explain. He was in front, looking like he was leading me somewhere. It didn't look like a casual morning walk to me. But I followed, because I always followed Lee. The landscape was tundra giving way to sparse black spruce, bunch of skinny half-dead trees all over the place, spaced far enough apart that you could see pretty far in every direction. There was no wind, though. Not really any sound, just our footsteps and breathing. I've been in quiet places before, but this gave me some weird vibes. We'd been walking for about 20 minutes when Lee stopped. Holy crap, he said. There it was. The house was smaller than I'd expected. Just a homestead cabin. Little thing, could have been built in a summer or two by hand. Half of it had collapsed where the roof caved in, and the remaining walls did not look stable. But there was a section that was still standing, intact enough you could probably go inside, if you really wanted to, and I didn't want to. Lee was frozen, not cold frozen, excited frozen. He stared at that house like he was expecting it to come alive and give him a hug. This is it, he said. This is the place the guy was talking about. I said it could have been any old cabin. There were probably dozens of these cabins out here, abandoned homesteads from people who'd come north looking for something and found out the hard way that Alaska does not give anything for free. But Lee shook his head at me. No, man. Look, I dreamed about this place. I raised an eyebrow. No, listen. 2 nights ago, I didn't tell you because it seemed stupid, but I dreamed about a house that looked exactly like this. The roof caved in, the door hanging open like that, all of it. I rolled my eyes. Man, that's just a coincidence. Or maybe you saw a picture of this place at the roadhouse somehow and it leaked into your brain. Lee didn't argue. He just kept staring at the place. Hey, we should go back. It's cold and I'm hungry. And there's not really much worth seeing here. Lee nodded, but he did it slowly. I could tell he didn't want to leave. But why, I wasn't sure. We turned around and started walking back toward the road. I was more relieved than I wanted to admit. Something about that place had gotten under my skin in a bad way. It wasn't really any reason I could understand yet. The house just looked like an old house, and the trees looked like trees, but standing there, looking at that partly collapsed cabin, I felt like I was being watched by something that didn't have eyes. We were almost back to the van when we heard something strange. It came from the direction of the house, a sound that I thought at first was wind moving through the collapsed structure. But as I said before, there was no wind. Then I thought it was an animal, a caribou or maybe a moose, making some kind of vocalization that I wasn't familiar with. It wasn't that either. It sounded like a caribou call, but wrong, stretched out, pitched low. It went on for maybe 5 seconds, then stopped. Did you just hear that? I asked Lee. He was standing by the van's passenger door, but he wasn't getting in. Now he was looking back the way we'd come, back toward where the house was hidden by sparse trees. Hear what? He said. That sound like an animal, or I didn't hear anything. I knew he was lying. I knew Lee well enough to know when he was lying. But his face was blank, and his eyes were fixed on that tree line, and he wasn't blinking. "We should move the van closer to the house," Lee said. "Man, why in the world would you want to do that?" "So we don't have to walk as far when we go back." Go back. I should have said no to him. Should have said we weren't going back, that we were getting back on the Dalton Highway and driving to Dead Horse, like we'd planned, forgetting about that house and the story that guy at the bar told us. But Lee was already getting in the van. I was freezing cold, so I didn't feel like arguing. I told myself it didn't really matter. It was just a house. We'd look at the house, creep ourselves out, then leave, and that would be that. I got in and started the engine. The thing coughed to life, and I pulled back onto the road, driving until we found a spot where I could pull off closer to where the house was, because that's what Lee wanted. We parked about 200 yards away, close enough we could see the roofline of the house through the trees, more like what remained of it. Lee was quiet now. When I looked over at him, he was still staring at the house. He looked weirdly satisfied, almost like he was getting off to the fact that we were so close to the place. I was so confused by him at the time. Like, what are we even doing, dude? But I didn't say anything. I didn't want to be whiny on the trip. I often go back to that moment a lot, now that Lee has passed, thinking about how easy it would have been to just keep driving from that point. To have put my foot down, telling him that we were leaving. End of story. But I didn't do that. And 200 yards away through the thin black spruce, the house waited for us. And so did something else. That night, the first night, Lee seemed fine. Better than fine, actually. He was animated, in a way that I hadn't seen him since we'd crossed into Alaska, telling stories about people from high school and laughing about his own jokes before he even finished them. We made dinner on the camp stove, canned chili, which we'd been eating so much of that I still can't look at it without feeling slightly sick. We played a few hands of rummy by the light of the battery-powered lantern Lee had bought at a gas station in Whitehorse, and talked about nothing important. I kept glancing out the back windows. That house was out there, of course. Invisible in this darkness, sure, but I kept thinking about it. Lee wasn't as focused on it as he was before. Now he was shuffling the cards and talking about a girl named Marcy, who'd sat behind us in junior year in English. How he'd always wanted to ask her out, but never worked up the nerve. "You should have done it," I told him. "I think she liked you. I mean, she always laughed at your worst jokes." "Whatever. She was laughing at Mr. Petey's toupee anyway," Lee said. "I just happened to be in the way." He grinned. "Besides, what would the plan have been? Take her back to my apartment so she could meet my mom's cat and see the water stain on the ceiling that looks like Nixon?" We turned in around 11. Lee took the mattress platform in the back. I'd gotten used to sleeping in the passenger seat, reclined as far as it would go, which wasn't far enough, but was better than sleeping on the floor. I fell asleep pretty quick. But I woke up because the van was moving. It wasn't being driven, but it was slightly rocking, like something or someone shifting their weight around. I opened my eyes and saw Lee sitting up in the back, his silhouette outlined against the window by the faint light of stars. He was staring at the house. I couldn't see his face, just the shape of him, motionless, except for his breathing. "Hey, Lee." He didn't answer for a few seconds. Eventually, though, he did answer. "Just looking." His voice was flat. Not like sleepy flat, but like he was emotionless. "At what, dude?" "The house." "It's pitch black out there, man. You can't see a thing." "I know." He lay back down. I heard him pull the sleeping bag up around himself, and I heard his heavy, slow breathing. I told myself it was just a waking dream. The guy was just half asleep, disoriented, maybe had a nightmare or dream of some kind of the Mickelson story, and he woke up confused. but then I heard that sound again. That strange caribou call from somewhere outside. Closer than last time, but not right next to the van. Definitely closer. Not sure if whatever made it was closer to us, or if we were closer to it now. Lee, you heard it that time, right? Huh? He said. He didn't seem impressed or worried. Oh, yeah. What do you think it is? I don't know. I waited for him to say something else. Maybe sit up and investigate it with me or make a joke about it. But he didn't do that. He just lay there, and a few minutes later his breathing changed. He was asleep. But I didn't sleep the rest of the night. It was snowing in the morning. Couldn't tell if it was going to storm later or not. Lee was up before me, which really wasn't like him. He was the type to sleep until noon if you let him. But now he was in the driver's seat, drinking instant coffee from the metal cup we shared, looking out towards the trees. We should check out that house, he said when he heard me move around, before the weather out there gets worse. I wanted to tell him no. I'd spent the last 4 hours of darkness lying awake, listening for that sound again, feeling like there was something outside. But it was daylight now, and in daylight things that seemed scary tend to seem more pathetic or not there. It was just an old cabin, old woods. Fine, I said, but I'd rather not stay too long, okay? The walk only took a few minutes, mainly because the snow started to come down harder. Up close, the cabin looked even more decrepit than it had from a distance. The door was open, not hanging open like we first thought. It was standing open, like someone had pulled it wide and just walked away. Lee went inside first. The interior smelled kind of funny, and I tried not to assume it smelled like corpse considering the legend we were told. It took a second for my eyes to adjust in the dimness. Then I really saw what was left of the place. Water damage had warped the floorboards and stained the walls. There was furniture left, but it had now collapsed into piles of wood and fabric that might have been a chair or a table, something that could have been a bed frame. But one room, through a doorway to the left, looked different. I followed Lee through that doorway and stopped. The room was intact, not just structurally. I'm not kidding when I say this. It looked preserved. No dust on the floor or animal droppings in the corners. The walls were clean, or as clean as walls could be after 30 years of abandonment. There was a window on the far side, clouded with grime but unbroken, and through it I could see the white sky and falling snow. Look at this, Lee said. He was tracing his fingers along the wall nearest the door. I moved closer and saw what he was touching. Marks in the wood, some kinds of patterns. Circles overlapping, scratched deep into the grain with something sharp. They covered the wall, hundreds of them, layer over layer, like someone had spent years adding to it. What do you think made these? Lee asked. It creeped me out that he said what instead of who. I don't know, man. Someone crazy, probably. These aren't random. He was still feeling them with his fingers, moving from one circle to the next. There's a pattern. See how they overlap? It's like I don't know, man, like a language. I told him we should go. The smell was getting to me and the room felt really weird, especially with those patterns. And with the way this room was, it felt like someone was still living here, and I didn't want to be around when they got back. That's when I saw the shoe. There was a shoe lying in the corner, a kid's shoe with a buckle across the top. It was old, with cracked leather but preserved by the cold. Right away I thought of the kids from the story, the Mickelson children, the ones that were found sitting by a table that wasn't there. I felt something real cold moving through my stomach. Lee walked over and actually picked it up. "Dude, put it down," I said. He looked at me and grinned. "It's just a shoe." "Yeah, but put it down." He did, but slowly. "Come on, let's leave," I told him. Lee shrugged his shoulders, but he followed me out of the house, back into the snow, and we walked to the van without talking. When I was about halfway back, I noticed Lee had fallen behind. I turned around and saw him looking down at his left hand. "What's wrong?" I cut myself," he said. He held up his palm. He was right. There was a deep slice across the meat of his hand, just below the fingers. Deep enough that I could see the dark red of the muscle beneath the skin. Red was running down his wrist and dripping onto the snow. "Oh my God, when did you do that?" I don't know." He was looking at the wound. I could tell he was confused and concerned. I didn't feel it." Back at the van, I dug out our first aid kit, wrapping his hand with gauze while he stood there. The cut was bad. He was probably going to need stitches. But Lee didn't seem bothered by the injury itself. He thanked me when I finished, flexing his fingers to test the fix, and he said we should probably head out. I agreed. I wanted to put as much distance between us and the house, what with all the strangeness piling up like this. When I suggested we drive south, back toward the roadhouse and then Fairbanks, Lee said he wanted to stay one more night. "But you just said you wanted to head out." He shook his head. "I meant after another night. I just remembered." He pulled his pack up to his chest, then pulled out a camera. "We should go get some photos of the house, in better light." "Your hand is gonna need stitches," I told him. "It's whatever, it doesn't even hurt." "Lee, one more night, then we'll go." I should have pushed him harder, or even threatened to walk away. But Lee was stubborn when he wanted to be, and I told myself at the time the cut wasn't that bad if that's how he was acting. So one more night wouldn't make a difference. One more night. Lee didn't take any photos. The next morning he said the light wasn't right. The morning after that he said he didn't feel like it. And by day 3 he'd stopped mentioning the camera at all. By then, he wasn't even eating. When I made breakfast, he'd take a few bites, then set his plate aside, saying he wasn't hungry. He was sleeping all the time, 10, 12, 14 hours at a stretch. But he woke up looking more exhausted than when he'd gone to bed. He had dark circles under his eyes, and his skin was looking more and more pale by the day. He was saying things too, these utterances across conversations. "Do you think people deserve what happens to them?" he asked one day. "What do you mean?" "Like if someone's already broken, maybe the world's just finishing the job, you know?" I told him that was a messed up way to think about things. He shrugged, then changed the subject. On day 3, he said, "My dad said there was something wrong with me when I was born, like there was something inside me that didn't work right." He hadn't mentioned his father in months, maybe longer than that. "Your dad was a jerk," I said. "He didn't know what he was talking about." Maybe. Lee was looking out the window again. He was doing that a lot now. But what if he did? What if some people are just made for bad things to happen to them? I found him outside the van that night, standing in the cold without a jacket. It was 2 a.m. I'd woke up from a dream I couldn't remember, and I noticed the back door was open, snow blowing in onto the mattress. He was facing the house, standing there, arms at his sides, head tilted slightly, like he was listening to something. "Lee, what the heck are you doing?" He didn't turn around, but he said, "Listening." To what?